New at 5, a Wrightstown man is accused of repeatedly sexually assaulting a now teenage girl over several years. The criminal complaint indicating that 37-year-old Aaron Bamke works for the Wisconsin State Prison System. He faces 3 felony counts, included repeated sexual assault of a child. The complaint alleges the abuse began when the girl was about 6 years old. Investigators say the girl talked to her mom about the abuse last week after feeling uncomfortable with how Bamke interacted with her. The girl's mother contacted police. If convicted, Bamke faces a mandatory 25 years in prison, but could be sentenced to life.